I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Okay, so listen. Just a couple other things. I did want to one. I want us to have somehow. I want to bring this up more here and get into this. And I was trying to put some folks together to do it in the way that it should be done. But I did see Questlove's "The Summer of Soul" documentary, and I encourage people to check it out if you haven't already. And I want us to come back and really rap about it at some point. But unfortunately, we can't do that now. So one thing I do want to do is to talk a little bit about this new Netflix series that I started watching. And this is not, me promoting the series. But it is, I have to admit, I'm fascinated by it. Anything that starts to talk about academia is going to catch my attention, and a series that is nominally about some fictitious elite white university hiring its first so-called person of color chair in what I believe is the English department. But it gets into what I admit I'm drawn to in it is that it so far has, I haven't finished it. I didn't binge the whole thing out, but it is talking a little bit about an ongoing struggle that I've experienced intimately and am experiencing intimately in my own career, the argument between STEM and liberal arts. So immediately, her department is faced with what are said to be budget cuts, but are really budget reallocations away from liberal arts and into science, technology, engineering, and math related fields. And in HBCU, this is an even exaggerated problem. At least at elite white institutions, there still remains the at least more of the illusion that they're there to promote intellect and philosophy and critical thinking and enlightenment. But it feels like increasingly at HBCUs, it is becoming more and more about vocation, base level thought, memory, regurgitation, scientific application. And so, for instance, one of the first things that she's asked to do by students organizing as she's walking across the quad is to sign a petition to save ethnic studies. So on the one hand, this was, for me, was very interesting because on the one hand, yes, this is about the attack on liberal arts. Why would ethnic studies need saving? What could possibly be wrong with ethnic studies? But then it also reminded me of the late great Jacob Carruthers' intellectual warfare book, where he was talking about how ethnic studies was itself an attack on African-centered education. And ethnic studies was the emerging in the 90s field of let's bring in all of the others and put them into this one group. So we don't need a specific Black, Latin American, Asian, whoever, indigenous. We just need a collective ethnic studies department. So I thought that was interesting. I think it's also interesting and accurate that the only black character is a woman engaging, attempting to become a tenured faculty member, a junior faculty trying to get tenure. But she's the only black person there, which is very, I felt like, accurate given that setting. Um, but I found there was, but in one of the reviews, because it's getting positively reviewed, the show, and one of them I found written by a woman who is an elite Ivy League so-called woman of color and chair at one of these institutions, and she wrote, quote, in fact, I can just um, well, I'll get it, it'll pull up second shortly, but she wrote, shows about academia and humanities professors in particular tend to fail miserably because most of our drama unfurls as minutia, as invisible labor that exacts its toll psychologically in isolation and behind the scenes. Furthermore, the material rewards of academia are minuscule when compared with other purportedly elite professions. The great Wendy Rhodes on Billions, the show Billions. I don't know if you watched it. It's another one of my admitted, whatever. The great Wendy Rhodes on Billions nailed it when she observed Riley that, quote, in academia, everything's a big fucking deal because the stakes are so small, end quote. Even the largest grants and most prestigious prizes earned by professors usually don't amount to much in the grander scheme of America's capitalist sensorium. So cultural capital and its very niche stakes remains king. Crucially, the series also shows us that universities, caricatured as they are by the right as bastions of progressive thought, are actually deeply entrenched, culturally conservative institutions whose foremost concern is liability, end quote. So those two statements from this review of the show by Karen Tongson, A Chair Reviews of the Chair is the title, that appeared in, is that Slate? Yeah, Slate. Is what I was reading from there. I'll link the story in the show notes below if anybody wants to read it in its entirety. But it makes the two key points that I've noticed in general that also are importantly on display in this show. One, again, is that most people outside of academia, obviously, is the case with most fields, don't really know how things work on the inside and get a distorted view of it in pop culture. So as Tongson writes, again, most of our drama unfurls as minutia. Um, so it's hard to depict that in a commercial media entertaining way. How do you really depict what goes on when so much of it is not shoot 'em up, bang bang, this that? It's not going to be some horrific or exaggerated pattern of behavior that would keep people tuning in each week, because so much of what is done is really subtle and petty, like promoting you twice to full professor because they know they can't deny the advance, but then just simply not paying you, or having that nominal rank mean anything in meetings or decision making. uh as the show deals with, even, a lot of it is petty stuff over who gets what office, or if you have an office at all. um yes, relative to the average working person, people in academia are well paid, but not at the levels that I think many assume, and not certainly at the levels of the highest of capitalist corporate America. So and particularly those of us at HBCUs or at so-called lesser, non-elite institutions, there's not a lot of money being made. So I actually tried to screenshot it, but they have a very, it's a very sophisticated algorithm. It doesn't allow you to do that from Netflix, because there's a point where her dean tries to get her to fire some of her employees in her department, saying that they're old, they have very low class enrollment, and they have the largest salaries. The lowest salary, all the salaries on that list began in the mid six figures, and then what? That's misread. They were, several of them were well over 100,000, I should say. Um, and the lowest one on there was like in the high 70s. And at an HBCU, that's where you start in most cases. Um, and the same thing with grants. So, if you're on $1 million grant, that's going to be pretty big for the most part. But $1 million in American daily business is not very big at all. So I really appreciate that point. But then more importantly is the second point, that crucially, the series also shows us that universities, caricatured as they are by the right as bastions of progressive thought, are actually deeply entrenched, culturally conservative institutions whose foremost concern is liability. And that sentence reads perfectly as a description of most HBCUs as well. They're more interested in, and I would add to liability, brand or image, but they are not bastions of progressive thought. They are actually deeply entrenched, culturally conservative institutions. So as Sandra Oh, the actress here, deals with in The Chair, a lot of her struggles are against an old white male aristocracy. She's trying to support ethnic studies. She's trying to support her black junior colleagues. She's trying to do this, that, and the third. But ultimately, she's spending most of her time trying to appease these old white men and their attitudes, and that is very consistent and I think very accurate. So I'm going to continue to watch this and see what else happens, and maybe come back with more. But I just thought that was very interesting and wanted to just share a word or two about that with you all here as well. And by the way, put in a plug again for my HBCU project, and encourage those who have worked at, attended, and engaged HBCUs in any substantive way to go to imixwhatilike.org and check out the HBCU project that I'm inviting contributions on as I slowly build out this Not a Different World project. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.